Hi, my name is Clay Tenquist, and this course is entitled Philanthropic Support to Advance Your Research. It is a faculty training workshop. Again, my name is Clay Tenquist, Senior Director, College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, and I'm also employed by the ASU Enterprise Partners, or the ASU Foundation. The first question I'd like for you to consider is, what is philanthropy? And many people have many different ideas of what they think of philanthropy as. As you'll find out in later modules, there's actually a very specific one that the ASU Foundation has to follow to the letter in order for gifts that can be accepted by the foundation to benefit the university. So the one thing I would like for you to also consider or ask yourself is my class participation with this class just to make myself aware of philanthropy and how it can benefit my research, or you have a very specific project in mind about your research that you're looking for private funding for? I would tend to think that the latter has been more successful for people that have taken this course when they have a very specific idea, project area. As you'll see, some of the assignments will then be completed according to whatever that specific project is. So the first question that we have when we come into this is, what is philanthropy? Philanthropy means many things to many different people. And you may think of philanthropy in a religious way. You may think of it simply as a gift. And that there's no wrong way to think about it. It can be any of those things. But our purpose here today is to talk about philanthropy in higher education and how that can help you. So I would ask you, define it for yourself. As for me, I refer to it as giving something without any expectation of a return for that gift. As we'll find out in a later slide, the Internal Revenue Service has a far different definition of it, and that is the definition that we have to play by for the rules of engagement for private philanthropy. I really believe the question is important, what is philanthropy? Because if your focus for this class were to be clear, if you have a research project in mind as you go through the class, or if you're just taking it to explore in a future way of expanding your funding, I think it has worked better in our classes when there has been a specific project idea that faculty members have had, and then can go through the course and apply these principles in the course to that specific research project. So as we talk about higher education and philanthropy, I'll tell you three things that private giving cannot do. It is not a magic bullet. It cannot solve every single need that you have or provide for it. It is not low-hanging fruit. As you'll see as we go through the objectives, that it is not always an easy thing to do to get a project funded privately. And if you think it's going to be simply cut and paste into proposals, that unfortunately won't work. And likewise, it's not a rainmaking machine. It won't solve all of your problems forever. If there's one thing you should remember, it is hard to do, and it does take time. And hopefully this course will help you do that. What can foundations do for you? Foundations, and to some extent corporations, are often overlooked and underutilized as a means of augmenting research funding and career advancement in many cases. When we started this course, we looked at specifically assistant professors, knowing that if they could continue to build their toolbox for advancement in higher education. Private philanthropy is one part of that for their toolbox, and in many cases can make the case for continued advancement at their institution. Some things that private philanthropy is very good for. It is good for seed funding. It oftentimes provides summer salary and gap support. The initial data collection efforts, oftentimes it's very difficult to find federal funding for. So if you could find a small initial data collection funding, you could utilize that as well, and then leverage that as a proof of concept for a bigger proposal. And again, in some cases, you can leverage private philanthropy for big dollar federal funding in some cases. What you should know about philanthropic organizations. Generally speaking, funders come in all shapes and sizes and persuasions. Typically, they get the word out of their funding through devices called requests for proposals, and it's driven that way. And one of the things that I would hope that you take away from this course is that it's relationship driven to a very high extent, which is very different from federal funding because oftentimes you don't need to have a relationship. You're just submitting something into a faceless organization. Private philanthropy is very much relationship driven, and I hope you take some of the advice further on to enhance that. We come up with oftentimes the difference between foundations and corporations. Generally speaking, foundations are charitable. And at our institution, those gifts, we'll get to the terminology a little bit later because people interchangeably use the language. Those charitable gifts are accepted by your ASU foundation. And only if they're non-charitable, they're administered by ORSPA. If any one of these three occurrences occur, and these are ors, there's no ands. If there's a principal investigator, or if there is a scope of work, or if there is a detailed budget, generally those are not going to be considered charitable. They will first go through the ASU Foundation, but they will be administered by ORSPA. Corporations typically make gifts because they want to leverage their relationships in the community or among their employees to show that they're a part of the community. And generally speaking, unless it's coming from a company's foundation, will not be. Now, in some cases, they can be charitable, but I'll tell you a little bit later how to make sure that they get into the right buckets. A lot of times corporations are making their gifts or corporate gifts through a marketing budget, and generally speaking, they're looking to get the biggest bang for their buck out of that marketing opportunity, and that way they would not be considered charitable. Now we get to the definitions again of grant and gift. As I said before, it's used interchangeably, those terms. And so that everybody is on the level playing ground for this course, this is how we'll approach it. I often think of the word grant similar to the word aloha. And aloha can mean hello, it can mean goodbye. So you don't really know. Generally speaking, charitable grants refer to funds involving either a principal investigator or a scope of work or a detailed budget. If it's any one of those three, generally speaking, it's going to be a grant and it will not be charitable in nature. Now, a gift. Again, however you define it, generally speaking, it's specifically usually an unrestricted contribution. What do we mean by unrestricted? Unrestricted means it can be used for whatever the beneficiary wants it to fund. It's not limited to a specific salary line. It's not allocated to a specific person or project. It's unrestricted, and usually the beneficiary of that gift can use it for any reason that they want. Again, as you will hear me speak over and over again, if it's in doubt of whether it's a gift or a grant, ask your development professional at your institution, and I will cover how to find that person if you're not familiar with that.